This is Clark Ingram with People Profits LLC. We help people with their employee turnover, labor shortage, and skills gap. This past week, we had a unemployment update, and most of you probably saw it on the news that we picked up 187,000 jobs in July, and that the unemployment rate was unchanged. However, they generally don't go into some of the other facts that I think are very important and that might be an opportunity for you guys to use in your organizations. So let's talk about some of these other numbers that are in the press release. They just don't get reported. The total number of outstanding jobs is 9.8 million. The number of unemployed people is 5.9 million. So you got about a $4 million deficit of people to jobs. The labor force participation rate was 62.6%. It's been exactly that for the past 5 months, and it's been within about a point of that for some time. The number of persons employed part-time for economic reasons is 4 million. So these are people that are working part-time jobs even though they want to have full-time jobs. That number is also pretty much unchanged over the last little bit. The number of persons that are not in the labor force, who is not considered part of the unemployment rate, who currently want a job, is 5.2 million in July. These are people that have not actively looked for a job in 4 weeks, though they might actually have done that. They were not documented that way. And so I just like to point out that's about the 5.2 million is about the number of people difference between the outstanding jobs and the number of technically unemployed people. These people are not counted, and so therefore they're literally kind of making the unemployment rate look better than it really is. Among those not in the labor force who wanted a job, and that is, these are people who are considered to be marginally attached to the labor force. Okay. Now, again, this is some fancy words that they're using to basically they're trying to cut down the number of people who they count into the unemployment rate. Okay. So that number is 1.4 million. So we got about 1.5 million people who are looking for a job, but they're not meeting the requirements that you have to be technically unemployed, quote unquote. So now it's interesting that if you take half of the part-time people and you add up these other categories and you take the unemployed people, that adds up to 14.5 million people who are in some way or another looking for a job, that are unemployed, technically or otherwise, and you have roughly 10 million jobs. So you actually have more people that are unemployed who see themselves as being unemployed, but are not finding the job that they want. So how does this affect you? Okay, now we're going to get down to the meat of this discussion. And one thing I've got to tell you is that everything that I do in my consulting work is organizationally or geographically specific. Okay, you might have a company that is right next door to you that are in a different industry or they have a different situation, whatever. And so their answers to some of the things we're going to talk about may be dramatically different than what your situation. Okay. But which of the above, here's one of the questions I want to ask y'all is that which of the above unemployed situations is affecting your organization? Now, chances are the things that I've listed off here, you're probably not going to know. You just don't have that access to that information. You haven't talked to anybody or anything. But this is a real key point, and that's really the point of this video is that you need to be asking yourself that question and trying to figure out how you can find that out for your organization where you're at. Okay. How can your organization adapt to take advantage of these situations? That's another question is that, okay, now we know that there's these different groups of people, how can we take advantage of that situation and get them to come work for us, since every group is looking to some degree for a job, et cetera. So what can you do to make that better? So let me just give you, I'm just going to give you a couple of examples so we're not here for too long. But at number one, one of the things you could do is simply ask anonymous questions to your candidates who are coming in. Just ask them some questions about, okay, what group, for instance, what group do they see themselves in? Why do they see themselves in that group? What is preventing them from taking a full-time job if somebody offered it to them, et cetera, et cetera? And what are there some criteria? And we'll talk about one big one here in a second. But where do they fall into this group? And is there anything that we can do as an organization to get them from where they are to where we want them to be and where they want to be? Okay. So one of the biggest, hottest issue right now in a lot of this is remote work. It's a hot issue. Everybody talks about it, etc. In my humble opinion, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to figure out over the next couple of years that the idea of being fully remote is not as big of an opportunity as a lot of them would like to think. There's a lot of people out there that that's what they want to do. They want a fully remote job, and honestly, there's just not that many out there. There's a lot of people who are chasing those jobs. I think also that in the long term, they're going to find out that, they either need to be on site more than they really want to be, or they need to at least be thinking in terms of like 50-50 or something like that. But I think that's not going to be something some people are going to figure out over the next 2 or 3 months. That's going to be something that's going to be 6 months to 2 years before they really start figuring that out. So another opportunity you might want to think about is how do you help reduce the skills gap between your jobs and the candidates that you're seeing? Is number one, can you train them into that job? Is the job? I've been in situations where we had highly skilled people that it took 3, 4, 5 years to take them from being a warm pair of hands to being that person that we really wanted, that revenue producing person. So that's one discussion. Another discussion, though, is what about those people where the job, yeah, it may take you 2 months, it may take you 3 months, but would you be better off by taking that hit up front and training those people into that job? Again, that's an organizationally specific question, and also that's a geographic question. Is sometimes it's just not going to work. Other times it might be an answer to your situation. The other thing is, can you restructure the job to fit who you have? For instance, right now there's a tremendous number of nurses that do a limited amount of care. Most of what they're really doing is they're certifying that other people did and did the right way what needed to happen. So a doctor might order something, but the nurse is not actually doing that work. It's somebody else is doing it, and then the nurse is making sure that it was done properly and the way it was ordered by the doctor. And so that's one of the things that you can kind of take a look at. How can is there an opportunity for you to restructure that job around the people that are coming in looking for that job? This is just a short list of a couple of things I wanted you guys to think about and can be explored for your organization. So again, this is Clark Ingram with People Profits. We help you with your employee turnover, your labor shortage, and skills gap. Thank you.